squint. 146 years they've been playing this game, and yet it still has us on edge like this. England on Saturday reclaimed the Calcutta Cup for the first time in 5 years, just the second in 8. Rugby's oldest fixture gave us an absolute thriller, coming down to a frantic final play. Rose Gang hauling the thistle in their side over the sidelines to see out the match. And in order to mark this broadly kind of historic afternoon, I sat down and watched the game multiple times with legit pro analysis excellent man Connor Wilson from Wibble Rugby to dig into just where the cup was reclaimed by England and relinquished by Scotland. So, just as we did, let's get right into it. Where was the one point that separated the sides lost and found? Have England turned a bit of a corner? And why couldn't Scotland keep the classic Scots sexual attack from their first 30-odd minutes going throughout the entire game? Saturday's was a fascinating match, a survival of the fittest evolution off, as both teams were forced into tactical changes by the approach of the other. Scotland started the game incredibly bright with 2 pretty spectacular tries, both finding space down the extreme and using some lovely support play to score. However, the origin of these knockdowns begins off the pitch with some beautiful identification and tactical attack work from Gregor Townsend and the rest of the Scottish team, presumably. Since the 2023 World Cup, England have been pioneering a new, heavily Springbok-inspired defensive system known as the hammer. The idea is pretty simple. You fly up incredibly hard, but instead of looking to pressure the ball receiver, the catcher, they look to flood the space, cutting off options, closing down space, reducing the time an opposition player has to react and make a decision, hopefully giving them none, forcing an error or shooting them backwards at least. You're often coming from outside the eye line and just appearing there as the ball is about to be caught. However, this defence was still finding its feet, so in the autumn we saw cracks start to form, teams able to exploit various side effects of the system or target players not 100% sure how to run it yet. Razzie Erasmus and Jean Nijnberg always said that the Springbok system took 14 to 18 games to implement to get up and running properly, so England was still in that breaking the eggs to make an omelette phase. And yet, with pressure starting to appear on Steve Borthwick after a run of losses as such, for this year's Six Nations, Borthwick and defence coach Joel Abd have compromised. England's forwards still use the hammer, blitzing up fast and trying to close down the space. Their job's exactly the same as in the autumn or the last Six Nations. This is a brilliant example from Tom Curry after a great counter-attack by Scotland. There's a chunky overlap and very little catch-up defence from England, but his hammer just cuts off Russell's options entirely, meaning he has no chance to get it wide and Gilchrist just crashes it up. The chance is gone by the time the ball is recycled. However, a phase or so later, we see how England has been defending in that wide channel over the last few games. Once the ball gets outside the aggressive forward pack, England's backs don't hammer, but rather drift hard, working out towards the touchline, basically stopping advancing at wherever they are when the ball reaches the 13 channel. It's a much more conservative approach by Rugby's out to the Tory party and had pretty great results against France in particular, where they would contain so much of the stretchy French attack. Even against Ireland, it was only once down a player in the backfield thanks to Marcus Smith's yellow card that Ireland were able to exploit this more passive defence. Essentially now, they switched to covering the ground out wide instead of flooding it, looking to contain instead of to crack the opposition, breaking their spines in close quarters, but bend don't break out wide. And yet, on Saturday, England were faced with a massive problem, as Townsend's troops came up with a genius way to splinter the whole system as they looked to attack the joining seam between the two approaches, namely a guy called Henry Slade. Scotland's second try, finished by the widowed half of Hugh Pilotu, is perhaps the best example of this philosophy they ran all game. Where England used the ball popping off the top of the line as a starting pistol to begin their blitz, Scotland used this play over and over again, hitting a forward stood still, 70 style, allowing White to whip it out and catch them off guard. And this one, early in the game, is especially good. As he kicks down the line, Russell makes a call to the forwards and everybody is on the same page. Cherry and Schumann jog over into position immediately, but all the potential jumpers just dawdle over, waiting, not really interested, and then bam. With Johnny Gray literally looking away, Cherry cocks back and chucks it. Gray springing into action, catches, lobs it back. England caught totally off guard. The pass to White isn't the best, but the 9 gets off immediately, and the ball is so fast. Contrast how far back England are as Finn catches the ball here to the only other line out Scotland play off the top to Russell at 10 in the first half. If you overlay these two images, the two freeze frames, it just highlights how much this tricksy lineup move disabled England's core blitz by not giving them a chance to start it in the middle of the field, even with one ropey pass in the middle. Scotland's goal here is to get outside the initial defence as quickly as possible, as we see here in this other example. When a team does get into this channel, England are totally reliant on Slade to shut it down single-handedly, which he does brilliantly here in this example, and frankly most examples. Yet Scotland still get 5 metres over the game line because England's defence defence in these wide channels is so passive. And yet, off that line out, Scotland have Russell throw this quietly exceptional pass. He completely takes 12 of the 15 English defenders out of the game. And the pass is fast, accurate, and knowing Slade is the key guy, Scotland look to overload him. Kyle Rowe disguised his run really nicely, coming round on an arcing line last second, forming an emerging Hugo triangle, where any of these three guys could be the carrier. Scotland actually used this exact move later in the game to put a little kick through, adding a whole extra layer, a whole other option England have to watch for. England adjust well, drifting to contain, but Scotland have an extra trick in the locker here. Having spent most of the last decade in Glasgow, Hugh Jones has clearly picked up a few tricks for a street fight and straight up kicks Henry Slade in the leg. Jones is incredibly subtle about it, looking like he does make contact, but it knocks Slade off balance. And yet, knowing if he trips, Scotland score, Slade decides not to risk milking it and tries to get back to his feet. It forces Freeman to jam in one and watch Rowe. Slade recovers and makes a tackle, but not before Freeman's been drawn in, and it gets Kinghorn onto the outside, who Freeman scrags, but the damage is already done. The ball is now in the hands of Robert the Bry himself, Duan van der Merwe. Willie de Vollis steps Smith and rides the tackle of Lawrence, offloading to that cheeky bugger Jones. Ollie Slightholme has worked incredibly hard from his other wing to get into position here, but White's support line slows him down, meaning he's got to consider both options, allowing Jones to just dive in the corner. It's a brilliant try, so smartly worked. Innovation into intelligent tactical play, into a vintage Finn Russell seed, into utter shithousery, into giving a bullshit player just the inch of space he requires to create a try. In other words, it's peak Scottish rugby. Their first try, however, highlighted how capable they are of adapting this into open play scenarios. It's not just first phase moves. This begins with a little box kick battle. With Slightholme having chased here, Scotland spot the Smiths are isolated, so send their two sweet and tender hooligans, Darge and Ritchie, on the kick chase, as there's nobody about to clear out a ruck if they get there. Except with Rowe off his feet having taken the high ball, there's no winger to make the initial contact, and the ball lifters of the world have united for nothing. Smith links up with Slightholme as soon as he gets home to pump it long. However, Kinghorn is in perfect position, and it allows Scotland to launch a counterattack. He arcs onto the outside of the English chase to hit it up in the middle, and Russell immediately goes to width. Having been involved in the kick chase, both centres are together on the far side, so Slightholme himself is playing the Slade role with Mitchell on the wing, and it allows Scotland to get outside them. Rowe carrying over the gain line. England set up the hammer, but instead of going to width immediately, Scotland changed tact and simply take the tackle. Chesham catches them 5 metres behind the gain line, but Scotland are set up to make the ball incredibly fast here. Only Toge is able to fold round on the open side in that time, meaning the hammer is just depleted of numbers. Once it does launch the following phase, it's essentially only Earl on his own, with Genge too slow to realistically keep up here, and Russell as such only needs to throw a simple ball to get outside this hammer and into the passive section of the defence, with Slade also not involved. This is a really smart play. Scotland have swapped Jordan and Duan's positions with the sole intention of making England shit themselves. This guy scored 6 tries in the last 4 games against them, so will probably have the same impact on the defence as multiple runners, and sure enough, Earl hammered out the game. Lawrence drifts, but with Curry and Chesham involved in the last tackle, his catch-up defender coming across is only Genge, leaving him completely isolated. Same as the second try, Duan goes for the outside break, looking to commit Freeman, looking to just draw him in, and the second the winger comes in, he offloads to Kinghorn. Because he's the biggest boot in the team, England quite often leave Henry Slade in the backfield, and he's a split second late to rush up, giving Kinghorn time to get it off to Jordan. The centre has the pace to beat Genge, making a frankly excellent effort to get there, leaving him up against only Marcus Smith. But thankfully for Scotland, Ben White is a good scrum half, so is therefore running a brilliant support line to get into position and take the pass, going all the way for his third try in 4 games against England. Even when it wasn't resulting in tries, Scotland gained so much major meterage from England's soft defence out wide. Knowing if they can engage Slade, they can make a solid 10 metres minimum. This is aided by the absence of Lieutenant Wing Commander Furbank, who's so good at shutting off these chances by just setting his biplane to kamikaze and just bolting into line to smash anyone coming up. He probably gives Kinghorn no time to get this pass away here, but without him there, Scotland knew there were easy meters out wide, so they built their entire game plan around buying them. But then, the whole game changes as this kick goes into touch. Despite initially walking to the line out, the English forwards and backs break off to come together for a moment here. A message has got on to the field. A change has been made from higher up. From this moment on, we hammer. Around 3 minutes later, Scotland have an attacking line out, their next attack of the game. And after Tom Jordan has an increasingly trademark moment of thinking he's massive, England hammer. 4 minutes earlier, Lawrence here would have drifted out to fill the space in case Scotland go wide. But instead, he smashes Jamie Ritchie, flying and knocking the ball loose. Slade advances on Duan, he falls to tackle because of course he's an English player and it's Duan van der Merwe. But a successful attempt would have meant the Hammers knocked them back 10 behind the gain line, maybe even 15. Van der Merwe makes some really good meters instead as a result, but next phase, bam, hammer, 5R. gone. Yet Finn Russell makes a brilliant spot here. In order to run this more aggressive system, England want key defenders Slade and Lawrence together to both shoot up and cover for each other, so they reload together onto the open side, and Russell switches up the play. Spotting is Cowan-Dickey in Slade's role, and it allows Jones up to within 5 metres off the try line. Scotland set their runs incredibly flat, something they did all game, to nullify the effects of this blitz, and the quick ball helps immensely. Schumann here tumbling towards the line, and with the front football now, Russell looks up and spots a try is on. If Finn Russell threw this exact pass in this exact situation 5 minutes earlier, Tommy Freeman looks to stay connected with Mitchell and crabs across, therefore looking to mark Tom Jordan on the extreme, try and catch him or push him to touch. Yet, with the pace of Rowe and the brilliant fade Russell's put onto this ball, he probably gets outside Mitchell and draws Freeman to put Jordan over in the corner to put Scotland 8 points at least ahead. However, this isn't 5 minutes earlier, so Tommy Freeman hammers. He eats the space before Rowe can get into it, and it causes him to drop the ball, knocking it on, chance gone. And from that moment on, England essentially closed off Scotland's main attacking strategy, and with it went Townsend's team's chances of scoring tries almost entirely. Scotland suddenly looked much less creative, rarely making major meterage again on the attack all game, all avenues now closed off, through that 13 channel being so much harder to get into. Scotland here tried to run a similar move to the Jones try, a few long balls out wide, White to Jordan, Jordan behind to Russell, who looks to overload Slade with Kinghorn and an arcing Van der Merwe in his eye line. However, Lawrence is up so fast on Jordan he has no time to throw the second pass, and he takes it into contact way behind the advantage line. Or here, Scotland have numbers wide, but Lawrence again flies up so fast he just conquers the space. Neither pass to Russell or Jones is on anymore and allows Cunningham himself to finish him off. England then get off the line really well in successive phases to take out each Scottish player. Every tackler just holding their man, this fin-on-fin contact, preventing Russell reaching the breakdown quickly enough, allowing Itoje to make an utterly brilliant, world-class and 60% illegal turnover, the illegality only serving to make it even more incredible. As ever, the line on this channel is, it's not cheating if you get away with it. The complete tactical change essentially won England the game. If they continued with the defensive strategy they'd implemented over the opening hour, Scotland probably score a solid 3 more tries, maybe even more, over the course of the game. Instead, they didn't even create 3 more chances. The hammer wasn't perfect, not by any stretch. England clearly haven't been spending much time on it in training, and it caused some massive teething issues, such as Jamie George here finding himself in Slade's role and allowing Van der Merwe to get on the outside, or this communication issue. England's end goal for me is always going to be comfortable enough with both defensive systems, the hammer and the drift, to switch on the fly as the Springboks do nowadays, yet they're just not at that stage yet. Here, Lawrence and Daly look to hammer while Slade is intending to drift, and it allows Finn Russell to shoot right through a gap. A brilliant recovery by Slade away from gifting them a try. Yet, this ultimately was an incredibly smart, on-the-fly bit of problem-solving by Borthwick and his players, and it scraped a game that so easily could have been a procession into a dogfight. Because that was exactly what suited England perfectly on Saturday. Their attack was broadly very good against France and had some fantastic moments against Ireland, but on Saturday, that was rarely an option, thanks to the other half of Tooney's terrific tactics. Since the new law changes, England's general kick strategy is thus. When receiving a kick, run it back first. If that doesn't open any chances, set up for a box kick, which you then hammer long, looking to send the winger after it to smash the catcher rather than contest. The opposition hopefully then kick it back, allowing you to attempt a counter-attack in turn. Scotland on Saturday basically disarmed this, especially in the first half. Whenever in their own half, they looked to kick contestably. Knowing Tommy Freeman is excellent in the air, Scotland didn't hang a single bomb on him all game long. Instead, they targeted Slightholme and the Smiths, who at under 6 foot are like half a person, next to Jamie Ritchie, who Scotland regularly used on the kick chase, beating Slightholme in the air here, with Darge following up. And then, whenever they did recover a kick, Scotland followed up like this, a double kick, with the English backfield all out of sorts. Russell here is a yard or so off a 50-22. They even ran this kind of play off X's. With Freeman here around the ruck, they hang it right on Marcus Smith, and Ritchie once again can outjump him and tap it back, Kinghorn pumping it long. Finn Smith covers this well, but his kick ultimately just gives Scotland a chance to counterattack. Their really smart kicking game gave Scotland almost complete control of territory in the first half. England could do nothing, just recover and react, even once they sorted their defence out. Borthwick's bunch got into the Scottish half just twice in the entire first 40 minutes. Once this lovely first phase offload move from Lawrence and Smith, and the second, the lead up to the Tommy Freeman try, which we've ignored the controversy at the end, let's just forget about that for a moment, is a nice call. These repeat phases bring defensive captain Hugh Jones in tight, and whilst Freeman calls for a phase earlier, Mitchell wisely holds on for one more go. Jones is properly sucked in. He's actually in the ruck, and Darge attempts then to slow the ball down instead of folding round to fill in here, leaving Schumann in tight, beaten by the pass, and with Finn Smith lurking kicking out the back, Tom Jordan shoots up to smash him if it goes wide, allowing Freeman a one-on-one with Russell. Except the referee is so eager to call an advantage here that he doesn't watch his own position, getting in Russell's way, meaning Finn has to initiate contact on Freeman's terms, allowing only for a passive tackle, which Freeman can ride and get the ball, well, over the try line at very least. We won't talk about what happens next. This was one of 3 tops try-scoring opportunities England had over the entire game, but at the start of the second half, in order to adjust this, England made a few small tweaks to their own kicking game. One, they replaced the struggling Slight home with the both taller and more experienced Elliot Daly, who's also much better in the air, who also helped enormously with the hammer, smart defender that he is. And 2, they changed their entire kicking strategy. When forced into slow ball, England kicked contestable, looking to at least spoil the ball, and when in their own half, they initiated the more open traditional kicking battles instead of box kicks back and forth that we saw in the first half, pumping it 22-22. This allowed them to get significantly more into the game. The build-up to Freeman's try remains the only time in the match that England got beyond phase 4, but where in the first 50 minutes that was largely down to Jamie Ritchie being utterly outstanding. I can't quite overstate how good Jamie Ritchie was. We're not doing a full section on it this week, but he was phenomenal, best player on the pitch by a country mile, and just consistently spoiled or turned over their ball in that first half. In the second, it was far more because England were now kicking on the front foot, where before they were using their own game plan on Scotland's terms. Instead, in the second, England deviated to more improvised kicking methods, but on their own count. For me, Scotland were the much more threatening team, but England's ability to adapt on the fly just about makes them deserved winners of this match. Yet, there was almost one final twist in the tale, as a burst by Stafford McDowell allowed Scotland to put their own arch rapier over in the corner to almost send proud Steve's army home to think again. This is a brilliant move, opening up the space for McDowell to burst through the gap out of nowhere. But we actually get a perfect demonstration of how good it is and why it worked much earlier in the game, as Scotland attempted to run this exact move in the first half, but the hammer stepped in. The move, as it worked on the final example, is lovely. Russell hits Duan on first phase, and reputation leads England to swarm him. Van der Merwe is essentially a decoy runner who carries the ball, because this is all about third phase. They also want England thinking about Duan, watching for him in case the ball gets out there again on successive phases. Tom Jordan then goes into this ruck and joins a forward pod clearing out despite the ball already being cleared out, and as Scotland hit a free pod here who carry after a little pop pass, the ball is clean, but watch Ewan Ashman here, where in the first half the hammer caused Schumann in that pod to fumble the ball and he disconnects from Dempsey, wrapping around the short side, meaning this is a one-man ruck, it's run cleanly but nobody is sucked in around the fringe. Ashman instead comes in on an L shape to pin Jamie George into the ruck. He's just stuck here, not contributing. Finn Baxter folds open side, and the moment he does, with George prevented from bouncing back out, it opens the gap. Where Cowan Dickey is able to get back up to his feet in the first example, this is wide open in the final 3 minutes. Tom Jordan has disguised himself as a forward by entering that ruck, so England are only watching for a standard arrowhead pop pass here when he turns his body. McDowell starts all the way over here, out of the eye line, and critically, is Stafford McDowell, so isn't getting the same level of attention that a winger, a Duan, even Hugh Jones would be getting. And yet, his line is so good that Lawrence Delalio probably tried to sniff his TV. He careers all the way through the gap and into the 22. The game opening right up and England scrambling to get back, while Scotland have in turn anticipated the break and got themselves right out wide. They have numbers and they spread it out to Van der Merwe, who scores in the corner. There was one final stanza after Russell's misconversion, however, but it was ended by 2 brilliant defensive interventions as the ghosts of Worcester Warriors won the game for England. First, this hammering from Ted Hill, completely shutting off Jordan's options as he looks to play into some space out wide, and then this, a couple minutes later, from Finn Smith, just slapping Russell's arm as he slings a wide ball, the egg then bouncing along the turf instead of landing perfectly in Rowe's hands, giving the winger no time to make a decision. England are in his face, the maul is called, and even before the ball is shoved into touch, the game is won. All thanks to 2 Worcester boys putting in an extra bit of effort. Because ultimately, this was a game that came down to those tiny, tight margins. A 1-point match that felt on edge the entire way. The Calcutta Cup is a special fixture. One of the most fraught in the sport, and it's impossible to watch without getting emotionally invested. England now take on Italy, looking to win 3 games in a row for the first time in what feels like quite a while, whilst the Scots welcome a resurgent Wales in the world's 3rd oldest fixture, hoping this time they won't have to leave it so late, even after 146 years of waiting.
Thank you for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks enormously to Connor from Wibble Rugby. If you want to go and check, all his stuff is in the description. Please go and look at that. He only makes a few videos a year, but like they are unbelievable.
They are so good.
England recently is phenomenal. If you're an England fan, like go and look at everything he's doing.
He like actually knows what he's on about. Yeah, way pretend to.
As like previously worked for Gloucester for people with other teams. I don't think I'm allowed to mention, but is phenomenal. Like brilliant guy, brilliant analyst. We watched the game together a couple of times and. Yeah, phenomenal insight and big help in this video, so thank you to him. Thank you to everyone on Patreon that's supporting the channel. It's made a huge difference. We've got some exclusive stuff coming up, including something in the next few days with Ben Youngs, who we joined for the Love of Rugby podcast. We want to go and have a look at that. That'll be up. I think one is up already by now. We've also got more stuff coming as well, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, there's an exciting video that we filmed there that will be in a few weeks' time. But in the meantime, Six Nations... We are going to look at the other two games from the weekend in some capacity. Wales weren't miserable, and we're going to talk about that. Right. We're going to milk that as much as we can before it all goes downhill again next week. So lots of fun stuff there.
Yeah, France played well. We'll see all of that. We'll see all of you soon for more
Rugby!